The world will tell you the business God blesses is built on strategy, capital, and hustle. But the scriptures point to a place almost no one thinks to look. Not her hands, not her plan, her mind. Because before God changes what is in your hands, He changes what is in your head. Today, I want to walk you through 7 biblical laws that govern the mind of the businesswoman God blesses. Here on The King's Daughter, we open the scriptures for women. Subscribe and stay to the end. Before we begin, I want to anchor everything we are about to say in a single line from the book of Proverbs, because it is the foundation of all 7 laws. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Read that again and read it as a woman. As she thinks within her heart, so she becomes. Your work does not flow from your hands first, it flows from your mind. The decisions you make, the risks you take, the fears that stop you, the way you handle both failure and success, all of it begins as a thought before it ever becomes an action. And here is what almost everyone misses. The world pours all of its attention into strategy and tactics and the size of the number, and it pays almost no attention to the mind behind it all. But God begins exactly where the world refuses to look. He begins with the way you think. The mind is the soil, and your circumstances are only the harvest that grows up out of it.
You can spend years frantically trying to change the harvest, the numbers, the results, the outcomes, while never once tending the soil they grow from. The woman God blesses understands this. She gives her attention first to the ground that everything else grows out of, the quiet, hidden daily work of how she thinks. Tend the soil, and in time, the harvest takes care of itself. So as we walk through these 7 laws, I do not want you to hear a list of things to do. I want you to hear 7 ways of thinking, 7 settled convictions that quietly shape everything a blessed woman builds. And stay with me all the way to the 7th, because it is the ground that the other 6 all stand upon, and without it, not one of them will hold. The first law is the law of the renewed mind. The Apostle Paul wrote words that every Christian woman in business needs framed over her desk. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Notice that transformation does not begin with your circumstances, it begins with your mind. The default thinking of the world is loud and it is everywhere. It whispers that there is never enough, that you are behind, that you must compare yourself to every other woman, that your worth rises and falls with your results. And if you simply absorb that thinking without question, it will quietly run your business and run your life into the ground. The woman God blesses does something radical. She refuses to let the world set the pattern of her thoughts. She deliberately, daily, renews her mind in the truth of God. She takes in His word the way she takes in food, because she understands that a mind fed on fear will make fearful decisions, and a mind fed on truth will make faithful ones. Picture 2 women facing the exact same decision, the same opportunity, the same risk. One has spent her mornings soaked in the anxious noise of the world, and her mind is a tangle of fear and comparison. The other has quietly anchored her thoughts in the promises of God. They will not make the same decision, even with the same facts in front of them, because they are not thinking with the same mind. The input you choose becomes the decision you make. So let me ask you honestly, sister, what is shaping the way you think right now? What voices, what feeds, what fears are setting the pattern in your mind? Because you cannot build a blessed life on a borrowed and broken way of thinking. The renewing of your mind is not a one-time event. It is the daily discipline beneath everything else. The second law is that she thinks like a steward, not like an owner. This is one single shift in the mind that changes absolutely everything about how a woman handles money and work. The scripture declares that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness of it. Everything already belongs to Him. Your business, your income, your skills, your opportunities, none of it is ultimately yours. It has been entrusted to you to manage on His behalf. The woman with an owner's mind clutches everything tightly, lives in fear of losing it, and slowly makes the work all about herself. But the woman with a steward's mind holds everything with an open hand because she knows the true owner, and she knows her job is simply to be found faithful. Remember the servant in the parable who buried what he was given. His real failure was not in his hands, it was in his mind.
He thought like a frightened owner instead of a trusting steward. And that single wrong thought led him to bury the very thing he was meant to multiply. When you begin to think of yourself as a manager of what belongs to God, the crushing weight of ownership lifts off your shoulders, and a holy freedom takes its place. Watch how this one thought reshapes 100 decisions. The fear of losing a client loosens its grip because you were only ever managing what was his. The struggle to give generously becomes lighter because you are not handing over your own, you are simply moving his resources where he directs. Even a painful loss lands differently on a steward than it does on an owner. The mind that has settled the question of ownership has settled half its battles before they ever begin. If this is already speaking to you, type the word steward in the comments and let us keep going. The third law is that she carries a sound mind, not a spirit of fear.
The scripture says plainly that God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Hear that phrase, a sound mind. A clear, steady, sober mind that is not ruled by panic. So much damage in the working life of a woman of faith is not caused by a lack of talent or opportunity. It is caused by fear, by decisions made in a panic, by opportunities refused because the fear felt louder than the faith. Think of the people of God standing at the edge of the promised land. They sent in men to look at it, and the same land produced two completely different reports because it was seen through two completely different minds. Most of them came back and said, "We are not able. There are giants. We felt like grasshoppers." But two of them looked at the very same land and said, "We are well able to take it." Same land, same giants, two different minds and two completely different destinies. A fearful mind shrank the people back into the wilderness for a generation. A sound and faithful mind was ready to step in and possess the promise. Fear is an expensive counselor. It talks women out of opportunities God had opened, out of asking for what their work is worth, out of stepping through doors he himself unlocked. A sound mind does not pretend the giants are not there. It simply refuses to let them be the loudest voice in the room. It weighs the facts soberly. It prays, and then it decides with a steady hand, trusting the one who promised to go before her.
So, which report is running in your mind today about the work in front of you? The woman God blesses learns to make her decisions from a sound mind anchored in faith and not from the trembling voice of fear. If this is ministering to you, take a moment to subscribe and walk with thousands of women learning to hear the voice of God. The fourth law is that she guards her mind and she takes her thoughts captive. The Proverbs give us a command that is pure wisdom for any woman who builds. Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. The word for keep is the word a watchman uses for guarding a gate. Your mind has a gate, and you are the one responsible for what you allow to walk through it and take up residence. The woman God blesses does not let every fear, every comparison, every lie, and every accusing voice move into her mind and live there rent-free. The Apostle Paul described it as casting down every proud thought and bringing every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. That is active, deliberate work. It means when the thought comes that says, "You are not enough, you will never make it, look at how far ahead everyone else is," you do not simply let it sit there and grow. You catch it, you hold it up against the truth of God, and you replace it. It sounds simple, and it is anything but easy, yet it is the very heart of a renewed mind.
When the lie says you are going to fail like last time, you answer it with the truth that the one who began a good work in you is faithful to complete it. When the comparison says everyone is further ahead than you answer that you are running your own race, on your own path, at the pace God set for you. You do not argue endlessly with every passing thought. You judge it, and you let only the true ones stay. Paul even told us exactly what to fill the mind with instead. Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are pure and lovely and of good report, think on these things. A guarded mind is not a passive mind. It is a woman standing watch at the gate of her own thoughts, deciding with diligence what she will dwell on. If this message is helping you, share it with a woman who needs to hear it today. The fifth law is that she keeps her mind anchored, and so she carries a peace that steadies every decision. There is a promise in the book of Isaiah that is almost too beautiful to rush past. You will keep her in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you. Perfect peace is promised, but notice the condition. It belongs to the woman whose mind is stayed, anchored, fixed on God. The world keeps your mind racing, tossed by every headline and every fluctuation and every comparison. But a mind anchored on God is a mind at rest, and a woman who thinks from rest makes far wiser decisions than a woman who reacts from panic.
The Apostle Paul promised that when we bring our worries to God in prayer, the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard our hearts and our minds. That word guard is a military word. The peace of God stands like a soldier at the door of your mind. He also tells us to set our minds on things above, not on the things of the earth. This does not mean you ignore the real and practical matters of your work. It means you refuse to let them become the highest thing in your mind. The woman God blesses does not make her decisions in the middle of an internal storm. She anchors her mind on God first, lets His peace settle over her, and then she decides from that place of rest. There is a world of difference between a decision made in a storm and a decision made in a calm. The storm decision is reactive, rushed, ruled by whatever feels most urgent and most frightening in the moment. The calm decision is clear, prayerful, and unhurried. So before the difficult conversation, before the big commitment, before the response she is tempted to fire off in anger or fear, the woman God blesses learns to return her mind to its anchor first and to let the peace come before the choice. The sixth law is that she thinks for the long term and even for eternity. The world trains the mind to think only about right now, this month, this quarter, this immediate result. But the Proverbs tell us that the thoughts of the diligent lead surely to abundance, while everyone who is hasty comes only to want. Notice that it is the thoughts of the diligent. Diligence begins in the mind, in the willingness to think ahead, to plan, to count the cost before you build, as Jesus taught when He spoke of the woman who would not begin a tower without first sitting down to count whether she could finish it. The Scriptures also warn that where there is no vision, the people perish. A mind without vision drifts. But there is an even higher horizon than the long term, and the woman God blesses learns to think all the way out to eternity. The Apostle Paul said that we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are unseen. For the things that are seen are temporary, but the things that are unseen are eternal. A woman who thinks with eternity in view holds her business differently. She is not enslaved to the panic of the moment, because she is building for something that will outlast the moment. She makes decisions today as a woman who can see further than today. This is the mind that plants trees whose shade she may never sit under. It is the mind that builds something her children and her grandchildren can inherit, that resists the quick and shallow win for the sake of the lasting one, that asks of every decision not only what will this do for me this month, but what will this have meant in 20 years, and what will it have meant in eternity? A woman who thinks that far ahead is very hard to panic and very hard to derail. The seventh law is the one the other six all stand upon, and it is the deepest of them all. Her identity is anchored in God and not in her results. This is the foundation, because if your sense of who you are is tied to how your business is performing, then you will ride every high and crash with every low, and fear will run your decisions for the rest of your life. But the woman God blesses has settled the question of her identity somewhere the market cannot touch. The Scripture says of her that the king's daughter is all glorious within. Her glory, her worth, her identity is something interior and unshakable, rooted in whose she is, not in what she produces. The Apostle Paul put it this way, "I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me." When your identity is anchored there, something powerful happens to the way you work. Success can no longer inflate you into pride because your worth was never built on it, and failure can no longer destroy you because your worth was never built on that either. You become free. Free to take a wise risk, free to recover from a loss, free to do excellent work without that desperate, grasping need for it to define you. The woman who knows she is already a daughter of the King does not work to earn her worth. She works from a worth she already has, and that one difference changes everything. The woman who works to earn her worth is anxious, easily wounded, and quietly desperate,
because every setback feels like a verdict on who she is. The woman who works from a worth already settled in God is steady. She can hear hard feedback without falling apart. She can celebrate another woman's success without shrinking. She can lose and begin again, because the loss never touched the thing that actually defines her. That is the freedom every other law was leading toward, and that single settled truth is the soil in which every other law can finally grow. So let us gather all 7 together, because they form one beautiful picture of the mind God blesses. A mind renewed in His truth instead of conformed to the world. A mind that thinks like a steward, not a grasping owner. A sound mind, free from the spirit of fear. A guarded mind that takes its thoughts captive. An anchored mind that rests in His peace. A mind that thinks for the long term and for eternity. And beneath them all, a mind whose identity is settled and secure in God alone. Do you see it now?
The world is forever trying to build the businesswoman from the outside in, through strategy and image and results. But God builds her from the inside out, and He starts in the mind. He is far more concerned with the woman you are becoming than with the numbers you are chasing, because He knows that a mind made new will, in time, reshape everything your hands touch. As a woman thinks within her heart, so she becomes. So this week, do not only work on your business, let God do His deeper work on your mind. My challenge for you is this. Of these 7 laws, which one does your thinking need the most? Not the one that sounds nicest, but the one your mind has been resisting. Name it and write it in the comments, because the moment you can name the thought that has been holding you back is the moment God can begin to renew it. There was a young woman named Mary who, when her whole world was turned upside down, did not panic. The scripture says she pondered all these things and kept them in her heart. Be a woman like that, a woman who thinks deeply, who thinks rightly, and who anchors her mind in the God who is already with her. Until next time, walk as the daughter of the King that you already are.